So we have a microphone up here if anyone wants to come up and ask questions, and or Joel. Oh, that's a very important, all right. So we maxed out the line of credit, like 3 years ago? Or close to maxing it out. Since then, we have not had to touch the line of credit. So it sat at $550 for about 2.5 years, and then we paid it off with this rolling it into the new mortgage. We have not had to touch a line of credit since then. Yeah, and we redid that part in October. So for a good 2 years, we've had this other financial diligence that is helping us control how we're spending here. So if you had concerns in the past, and this was, again, in those recessionary or post-recessionary times where we were changing as the size of our school, we were changing the size of our staff, we were probably slow to react to the realities of the market and to giving. We're past that now. Steve, you can come up. Yeah, come on up. We can turn it around or whatever we want to do. Oh, it should be on. Hold on. No, it turns itself off. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, last year at the congregational meeting, there was a follow-up to Imagine that was discussed, and I just wondered if anything was done, and if so, what came out of that?
So for the follow-up for Imagines from last year, we spent a long time as a church council talking about what to do next. And the first important thing that came out, I'm going to go here. The first important thing that came out is we weren't going to spend any money that we hadn't realized yet. So we were moving into a non-deficit spending mentality. And we've actually applied that to all of our ministries. So that's not just for Imagine, it was for that too. We chose to borrow ahead of time to bring in Randy and Carol early because we didn't feel like we could make significant progress in a new direction without doing that. But once we had done that and we had brought them in and we're paying for them for their salaries, we chose not to do any other spending until we brought the money in. So that money has been banking up until we could make those choices. And the choices we made, and I think I mentioned earlier, they were directed a little bit by some of these additional gifts we got, was to do something with the lobby so we could have an impact. And this is where it gets kind of interesting, at least for me. Some of our newest members, some of our younger members, members in their, who still have very young children or are still having children, told us, as people who have been here for many more years, that we really needed to refresh the lobby. That was actually an important thing to see as they were going to, as they were looking at other churches in the area, that if we refresh the lobby, that would be an impact to how people view the church. Alternatively, or ironically, people love that we've got a more classic-looking sanctuary. So it's this really weird dichotomy that was also influenced in a lot of the things we were reading. People love to see, modern-looking lobbies with coffee machines and lots of light and even an industrial look. But they were also looking for a church that looked like a church. People don't like to go to an auditorium, or a lot of people don't like to go to an auditorium and have church. So we're like, okay, well, that's actually something we could do here. We could refresh the lobby and keep the sanctuary the way it was. The next thing is, doing the projector. That was coming together out of need, as this one occasionally randomly shuts itself off because of computers now are spitting out codes that the projector interprets as a shutdown code, and it's like, you just need a new projector. So crazy stuff like that. But that was some of the things we were doing. The other things we chose not to do last year is we chose not to bring in that new youth leader yet, and we continue to work with Pastor Randy, with Mark, and with Erica on the goals and what they would specifically do if we brought somebody in. We let them work for about 2 months on a plan, and they pulled that together. Pastor Mueller reviewed it and worked with them, as did Carol. They presented that to church council, and we talked about that for about 2 months. What was in the plan, whether or not we could get away with not funding that at this time, and then what to do next. And I don't know if that planning, stirred something in Mark's heart. I think he left because he's getting ready for Sunday Night Experience, which, if you don't know, has about anywhere between 30 and I think at the high point it was 100 kids were in the community center on a Sunday night. So depending on when we get out of here, if you want to, you can go down there and look at that. But we're now ready to fund that, and we have the funds to fund that role. So that's kind of the difference from what we said last year for Imagine. Did that answer your question? Oh, okay.
What I was getting at, it was discussed that there were a lot of people that hadn't pledged to Imagine and the possibility of contacting them.
Yes, okay. All right, so that became what we were going to call Imagine 2.0, and we had talked with Pastor Mueller about that. I'm going to say, as a church council, we were more focused on trying to figure out the bigger transition buckets than if we could go out and start to meet with people. And I think that is part of the thought in if we could use help with this next version of Imagine. And I think we need to go back to that original recommendation and actually set up meetings with every single family in the congregation and talk with you one-on-one about your thoughts on the church, kind of your vision, how it fits in with what we're doing, and actually follow up and do that. So I appreciate that you're holding us accountable to do that. And because I felt like we haven't followed up on that for you, and we should have.
Testing. Do we have any plans to replace Andrew for the music ministry? Because since he's been gone, we don't have any praise choir, we don't have any brass, and then Mark is working hard to do the contemporary worship, but he's already got 3 jobs around here. Yeah. So I wonder if there's something in the works with that.
So this is a good Pastor Mueller answer. I could answer for him, but
So the music ministry job is split between me and Mark, and we're working on that. In fact, as early as or late as this afternoon, we've been interviewing folks, and as soon as we can, we're going to have an answer for that. We're very happy with what Katie has done very well in the school and others, but it's getting hard to keep all the organists and everything else together. If you remember, that was a very sudden exit at exactly the wrong time. And while I literally last summer interviewed 73 different people. And either the ones that would fit were not ready to leave because they said, I'm a school teacher and I can't leave my school with nothing. And so we are in the hunt right now and working diligently to make that happen. Yes, there is. We have not stopped on that. This is. I will be very just as I did it for the finance ministry for a number of years, and was happy to lay that down. I'll be happy to lay the music position down. Yes. Yeah, it is a challenge for us. Andrew was a very unique human being, and if you remember going back to Gary, when Gary was here, that he was basically the organist of the traditional side, and we did the contemporary, and we did it all with part-time people. Well, it's hard to find people part-time who are willing to put this amount of work in, at a 15 to 20 hour a week job, because it doesn't pay enough with benefits. They have to have another job, somewhere along there. So it's a real challenge to find someone who's got the skill of traditional and contemporary worship. However, God does make them, and we're hunting and on my drive here, I was talking to one of them.
Thank you, Scott.
We love Trinity, but I have two daughters. One goes to Arlington Heights, one is in Texas, and both of those churches have a policeman on duty whenever there's a service. I don't know what it takes to do that, but there's a cop car in front of the church, and there's a policeman standing in the lobby. And with churches being attacked like they are, just imagine last Sunday when we were full, what could have been done by someone that could have gotten in with it. And I'd just like the council to consider that, maybe contacting the police and just seeing if they can do that, maybe or a little stipend or something. But a police car and a presence of a policeman could save a lot of lives here at Trinity. What better place on Sunday to do something other than Trinity for somebody that really wants to be effective with a gun?
Thank you, Kurt. I do appreciate that comment, and yeah, that's been on my mind heavily lately too. We do have a safety committee that we've convened, who's meeting and working on Sunday worship, a plan for evacuation if necessary for any type of emergency. So it's been a committee that has kind of come together, kind of an offshoot of the community care and alert team. And so we are working diligently on that, and I appreciate your comment.
Was that St. Peter, Arlington Heights? You said Arlington Heights. Was that St. Peter? Oh, okay.
You're going to go to another church.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good deterrent. All right. All right. We got Jan, and then we'll have, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Jan.
I believe you mentioned that Mark was involved in an S&P pastor program, if I
Yes.
heard you correctly. Can you explain what that is? I have no
Sure.
idea.
That's a specific ministry pastor. That is something that Pastor Gibbons, Pastor Pudell, and Pastor Pankow went through. It's a program where you can get a seminary. Oh, hey, Tom. You can get a seminary. I just noticed you. You can get a degree from the seminary and then become a pastor without having to go away full-time for school. So it was designed so that all of these churches who had men like these, who already have jobs and commitments, could go through the process and become a pastor. It's called the specific ministry pastor because they are then restricted on what they're allowed to do in the LCMS. And that is something that Mark is going through as he continues, to raise Evan, to live here and to live out in Carroll Stream, continue to be a DCE and lead youth here while becoming a pastor. And I think his intent is then to help us kind of like in an adult level when he does that. Did I do that well?
2 thumbs up. How many of you know a 60-year-old youth worker? How about a 50-year-old youth worker? We almost have one. And that's why Mark is working towards something else also in his career. That in the end, you can't be a youth worker and 60 years old. It's very odd and rare to be able to do that. And so he's a great blessing to. How many of you have been blessed by his preaching? He has other gifts and skills and abilities, and looking at him over the long haul, he's not going to retire as a youth worker from Trinity. So now, how do we help him move along and be able to do that, and then start bringing in younger folks? Because as young as Mark looks, it's a surprise.
All right. Bonnie?
Imagine is covering is covering Pastor Randy's and Carol's salaries till the summer of 2020. What happens to their positions when that's no longer funded by Imagine?
Sure. And that's been our challenge on a church council since we kind of envisioned this from the beginning. The way this is going to, the way we think this is going to play out, the way we've planned this to play out, is Pastor Mueller, if he'll, by then he may figure out what his next step in ministry is, and if it isn't, we're going to figure it out. We'll help him with it. So this is a serious concern for Chuck as a man, and as a father, as a grandfather, as a husband, and he has earned his right here that we're going to figure out a way to take care of him. So we're going to do that. All right. Most likely, there will be an opportunity for him somewhere in the LCMS or in the city or somewhere, and that we will, we may have to help that in some fashion. But the Big C church, has a lot of needs, and there will most likely be some place where he will be able to serve. And if Randy becomes our next senior pastor, then he would move into that role, and his years of service is different than Pastor Mueller, so there'll be some, we'll just call it salary savings there. About a year after that, Mark will become a full pastor and will stop being a DCE and an unpaid or low-paid vicar. I don't know how that really works. And then he would kind of take, Pastor Randy's position. Erica then is already a DCE here. And that leaves Mark's DCE position open, and then we're going to fill that with this new youth worker I talked about earlier. So we see it as a shifting of salaries. Hello? All right, all right. So Erica fills Mark. You are correct. And that's only because we called you as a youth DCE and then asked if you would please take over family until we had that figured out. And we're incredibly appreciative of that, as you continue to also help Mark with youth. Okay. So we see that as moving. So when the Imagine funds complete next summer, we could do one of two things. We could take additional Imagine funds and continue to fund that for a longer period of time. Or with all these other transitions, Randy's salary is picked up by like Pastor Mueller's, and then we have everyone shift, and that should actually be budget positive because of the years of service. The second part of that is, all right, thank you, Carol. Thanks, somebody rescue me. So Carol's role was in the budget before she became operations director. Now, when we moved her salary over to Imagine, we eliminated that salary from the budget. We would have to replace it, because in actuality, we probably shouldn't have eliminated it from the budget because she just took on a different role. Pastor's coming to correct me.
So here's a simple thing. We got a couple of retirements coming up, and so Rajeen will be retiring, and Pastor Warman is looking to go towards part-time work, and I'm heading towards retirement, and that should cover the changes. That's a simpler answer. So that there may be some overlap time that we need to cover, but it's all in the plan.
I didn't mention that because I didn't think I was allowed to. So I work in a corporate job, and I can't go around talking about when people might or might not be retiring. I'd get myself called into HR pretty quickly, so I just don't say stuff.
There was some money borrowed to fund the campaign when it started, and some of that has been forgiven over the process, but I don't see anything in terms of the repayment of that
yes.
funding.
All right. So we've got the Oh, that Carol, you answer that.
So, so some of that did fund the expenses to run the campaign, and that has been, we're running that through operations, so we're hoping that the surplus from operations will be available funding to pay back the foundation. So the church currently owes the foundation $109,000. The foundation forgave $25,000 at the beginning of the year, and they've also agreed to let us continue the year at 0% interest, so we're not accruing any additional interest. But we are still on track to be able to pay that back, so that is the goal. That money is due, I believe, September 30th. Yeah.
It is part of, I've seen the budget. So me not being a finance person, I asked Carol to reduce it down to something that I could more readily understand and present. The real budget with all of the line items has that in there. I forget what line it's on, but I actually saw the number for this year, this fiscal, and next fiscal, and I could see where it is in the plan. But again, I need to simplify stuff. If anyone who wants to talk more about finance, we can go deeper. And thank you for the foundation, first for the initial loan for that, which started all this going, and then for the forgiving of some of that, the interest on that, and then giving us extra time to be able to repay it. Because that has allowed us to do all of these things so we could then receive money and do stuff with it.
So friends, when the foundation members call and say we'd like to have a conversation with you about remembering Trinity in your will, this is the kind of stuff that happens, the creative things that happen, the blessings of our foundation. I want to just thank everybody who's pitched in so far and all the people who are going to.
Any other questions? All right. Pastor Tom.
Still at St. Paul in Chicago when Pastor Roselle was called. So I didn't get in on any of the conversation about the terms of his call. But people that I've talked to since then have indicated to me that he was called here to be assistant pastor to transition into the senior pastor position. I'm wondering how widespread that understanding is in the congregation.
Because I'm one of the guys that signed the call documents and did all the interviews and everything. So his call is to be the pastor for family and youth ministry and training. And we were training him to be a senior pastor here or someplace else and didn't know which was going to be. And we still don't know until the congregation votes. And so, again, there's been no promises. As Pastor Roselle came on, we made absolutely sure that thing that we had up or in your document, the diagram, that's actually was sent along with his call documents, as well as all the steps, and we've just been following along with that. So there's not any surprise at all. He is a pastoral assistant for youth and family ministry, parentheses, and training. Absolutely, and there may be a perception that's different than that, and all of us have to keep on talking about it and just saying, I'm sorry that's not true. Why don't you go to, instead of thinking about it, why don't you go to talk to somebody who either signed the papers or has been involved in this? And that's the challenge that we have. We knew that coming on, it was kind of like, if you remember back when Pastor Pankow was going through his SMP process and folks were saying, well, he's going to be the next senior pastor here. And I said, well, no, that's not his call, and that's not the direction we're going, but it kind of looked that way. Well, the congregation has to vote, and everybody's going to get a vote, and if it's, Pastor Roselle knows that he is being trained to be a senior pastor here or someplace else. He's getting great training and great experience. He's a great man.
I also signed the call documents, so did Dave Bowen, our elder chair. And that has always been our, our officially, that is exactly right. But Randy has the benefit of being here and going through senior pastor training while he's here. So he's going through the PLI, senior pastor PLI, which we were surprised to learn that most of the men going through senior pastor PLI are already senior pastors in their congregation and are learning additional skills to do that role. 30% of Randy's class is in his same role, being trained, and it has a leg up on all the other candidates when that church goes through the same process. My personal coach in anything for constitutions, and I actually have two, for anything with a constitution or anything with our policy-based governance, is Paul Bocci, who's on council with me now, and Elaine, who's a previous chair, two back, and she makes sure that we're doing all of the right things and we're following all the right process. But in answer to your question, there's Randy is getting great experience here, and I hope when we're ready in that timeline that we will nominate him and that he'll go through the process, and we'll see how he does against other candidates. But he'll have been here, for 3 years at that, or two and a half years at that point. So, all right, Kim. Uh-oh.
I'm one of the teachers here on staff at Trinity, and I was wondering if you could please explain a little bit more about this new budget breakdown,
Sure.
how you've separated the budget out. I recall in the past the church has funded the school, so I'd like to know if that is no longer true. And then the third part of my question would be, if it is indeed totally separate, I quite honestly, as a parent and a staff member, do not see any way that we would have a raise without raising tuition or greatly increasing enrollment.
The church and the school ministry are one. What we tried to do is, not really. We're talking about it in a slightly different way, because the cost of the actual direct cost for the school, that means the teachers, the books, the principal, the secretary, anything that goes directly to the school, we're saying that our goal is to have fundraising and tuition cover that. The rest of the costs, the indirect costs, which Trinity supports at about $525,000 to $650,000 a year, in addition to anything that's not covered. So, for instance, if we have a $1.1 million budget and tuition only takes care of $950,000 in fundraising, that year the general fund's got to come up with another $150,000 to make that happen. So we're not showing all of the costs up there. It actually costs about $10,000 a year for a child to go to school here. And we ask parents to pay a little bit over half of that now, and we have fundraising that picks up another couple $100,000 of that, but the rest of it comes from the general fund if you look at all the costs. So basically, Trinity is taking care of custodians, lights, heat, parking lot, mortgage, insurance, all those things that it takes to have a school. The whole church's ministry and our general fund takes care of. All we are saying in this is we're trying to find a way to make it easy and give our Principal Koenig both the ability and the freedom to control expenses and within the exact operations. And so what we did was we kind of changed the numbers around, and we split, instead of saying here's the operations for the K through 8 school, and here's the direct operations, and here's the indirect costs. What we did was we said, let's put the preschool, which was always separate, and the extended care, which is always separate, and the discovery camp, which is always separate on its own. Let's just smush them all together. Because actually, for instance, in this year, the preschool is, the school is underfunded for its direct costs about I would say 55,000 or so. And the preschool is covering those costs. So within the preschool through 8th grade program, the direct costs are being covered. All the indirect costs come out of our general fund. And so we haven't limited anything. We haven't slowed down. In fact, because sometimes the cost of education is greater than what we have in tuition and fundraising, we can go up to 600, and the highest it's been in the last couple of years is $650,000, which is basically 1/3 of our general fund goes to fund the school. So we haven't slowed down on doing that. This is just a way for us to understand how to figure out tuition and how to make sense out of it and explain it. So how do we get raises? Actually, about half the staff, a little over half the staff, gets raises every year because we have, it's not just the teachers, it's from the senior pastor down to the janitors, that there are steps as you go along. After you get to 15 years or so in the ministry and you haven't gone to any additional classes, like you don't get a BA and you get 9 hours more of master's work and then 18 hours or more at master's work and then 27 hours at master's work and then a master's. There's those 4 steps along there, and then there's also for the doctorate. Just like in public school, we have those steps along there. Everyone gets about a 1.5% raise. And so we've had raises all along for many, if not, and certainly not all. I haven't had a raise in lots of years. I'm at the top, however, of my steps, and I've been here so long that we don't keep on having steps going up. So, but people then either get a 1.5% raise every year, or if they go through colloquy, they get a 10% raise that year. And then if you go and you achieve 9 hours, and we pay half of the cost of continuing education, if you do that, you get about I'm going to say it's a 6 or 7% raise. But it's all, just like in the public school, it's all built for years of experience going up and then educational attainment.
All right, I'd like to add. So let's see, I've been on council now for 5 years. I've got another year, and they won't let me step down, so that's supposed to be funny. You're supposed to laugh. Okay. Thank you, Keith. So 4 years ago, I remember Paul challenged us at a congregation meeting that we had in the Family Life Center. If the trend in the school had continued, what were we going to do? And I took that question to heart, as did the rest of us on council. And we started looking at the tuition equation. And we dove into that, and we started, in our minds, separating some of the building and operation costs from the school costs. Because we needed to understand what the school or the church was funding with the school in building something that would work. Now, again, it's all one big budget, so from one perspective, that doesn't matter. But from a very important other perspective, it matters tremendously, because we've got a different calculation, which is teachers to students, and how many students we could have with our available teachers. And what you could bring in freely if additional students paid for their own user fees, that we could absorb into the school. What we learned, first with Dr. Lipka, and then Dawn started to give us different perspective on that, is we have a hard time recruiting into a private Christian school if families have already decided to send their kids to public school. And although we've had some, they're usually people moving into our community who are looking for something different, or have a really bad public school experience, which we don't wish on anybody. So the mechanism really is get families when they're younger, bring them in through our daycare, and then our preschool, and then show them the merits or have them already experience those merits there so they can come into our school and experience that. But for some of the programs we wanted to do, we had to figure out that other equation and figure that out. When Dawn chose to focus a lot because it was actually producing results, and I'm not saying that K-8 wasn't producing results, but it was easier to bring people into the preschool and then focus on them and get them into the next steps. And we're seeing that pay off. I often use an example. The last time we had 2 kindergartens was my son's grade, and hi Josh.
That's incorrect. My son.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Okay. That's current third grade. Okay. Again, I'm using old data because we tried things again. So we're learning over time where to focus and kind of how to apply that number so we can have something that balances correctly, that we can say that we can figure out ways to invest in the school and not make the number look overly crazy. So we came up with this balance, and we've been moving.
If I could just add a little color, since we've been on council at the same time, Joel Eggerding here. We on council had a hard time saying that when it's $10,000, part of that is because of a mortgage that we have. We were taking an allocation of the mortgage and saying this is how much the school owed. And we didn't feel that was right. We really didn't feel like decisions that have been made for 30, 40, 50 years as a church and school, we would say, we're going to say this is how much the school has to raise tuition to cover their portion of the mortgage. Because as Dave said, when we looked at what happened if the school were ever to go, we'd still have a mortgage. So we didn't think that was fair. So we've been working the last number of years to say money coming in equals the money going out, and the money, if you will, that the operating fund is spending or is for the facilities, for the building, for the insurance and all that. So that went into it as well. I just wanted to...
Because the next step, hopefully to finish answering the question that Kim asked, is if we can get us to the point where we come up with programs and other things with tuition levers and do other things and raise the number of kids who start to come in through K-8, we can get to a point where that formula works in the opposite direction and we can actually reduce tuition because we've got X number of kids in the school. There's a lot of things that lead up to that we're working towards. So that is our goal. And we've got people who are imagining other ways of delivering that we're praying come to fruition and that everything works out and that we can come up with programs that will help reduce tuition, get more kids in the school to further reduce tuition so that we can reach more families for Christ and build more disciples the way we used to do it, in addition to all the other things we're doing to reach families who may not ever be interested in our school. Does that help? I think she's nodding. Okay. I just want to share with you, this is a big challenge for us on church council, so if we're unclear, it's because we're still working through it.
Hello, I'm Janine, and I have been a member for like over 30 years. I had all 3 of my kids go to this school. They had 2 classes per grade. My concerns, my question is twofold. I see a lot of, I'm not going to say it meanly, gray hair and dyed hair here. I don't see a lot of youth here except for maybe our teachers. I see with our general fund, it hasn't increased. We're not going higher. We're not going higher in our church attendance. That concerns me. How on earth can we pay a teacher if we don't have the funds to do it? But more so than that, back 30 years ago when I joined, there was an excitement here. Pastor Senior, who was senior and was a senior pastor, was moving on and letting Pastor Junior to become Pastor Senior, and we were excited, and we had spreading our wings, and we had tents, and we had all kinds of fun things going on, and people were excited. I don't see that today. I don't see an excitement. I see a scariness, and I see we have a 6-year plan. We said we finished year 3, but does that mean year 2020 is the year we're going to do a calling and we're going to get some excitement here? Or does that just mean, okay, we're doing a calling and we're doing a calling? I want to see excitement back at Trinity. I'm a passionate person. I don't see that any longer. And I'm not going to say I'm old and can't be passionate, but I want the young kids. My kids don't go here. They don't want to go here. And why is that? It's because there's not the excitement. And I want Pastor to finish his time. I want to have new excitement here. And that's all I have to say.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful thing. We've got great excitement. I want to encourage you to do things like come to Frost Fest and see the excitement. Flannel Fest, the other things that we're doing. Yes, we are in a transition, and it's a challenge to do some things with the staff that we have, you know, because everybody, like this year, my plan was to be in charge of life groups and really have that a great push, and all of a sudden I got in charge of music. You know, those things happen. This place, if we did not have excitement here, we wouldn't have had 59 new members, new adult confirmations. But it's not the exact same thing in the same way. And a lot of the excitement that we have that's going on is in life groups, in people's homes. You know, and I've invited folks to our life groups. There's a lot of excitement going on. There's excitement in the school and the school activities. But as our kids are older, it's kind of hard to engage in that now. It's just like when my kids moved from here to high school, I got really engaged in the high school, and I had a whole bunch of years of Lake Park. I was a Lancer, baby, you know, and all that stuff that went along there, I haven't lanced in a long time. I went over and saw some other kids play basketball, and because I know their parents and other things, but as we get older, our kind of excitement changes. However, there are great things happening. Let me give you an example. We just got turned down for a grant that we had gone for to start, and we're going to find another way to do this, to start a block party ministry. Take the gospel to the community where they are, and take the trailer that sits out there all year round that Pastor Tom put together so many years ago, and we did a great job with that. And if we use it, we have fun with it when we're doing a parade. Well, why don't we park it at Stan's house, and close off the sides and put out a bunch of burgers and hot dogs, and teach kids about Jesus? Why don't we go to the neighborhoods to the where a lot of kids are in the apartments? Take it to the apartments and run Vacation Bible School there. We've been Erica she had to go do SNX. Well, between 30 and 100, something lots.
2 of the kids who will be leaving.
Yeah.
How many? What do you think? About 30 tonight?
Yeah, there's somebody who's on the 411 all the time. Yeah.
So
let's go. But
so
there's a lot of great things happening here, and we've had Christmas Vacation Bible Schools, other things. But as you start getting gray hair and less of it, you stop going to those kinds of things. And so you don't see it. And I just encourage you. There's a lot of great things going, and the level of excitement here, I think, is growing and growing.
Oh yeah, give Dave a mic.
I've had enough excitement for the last couple of years, the last week, but I really want to say, because I'm glad you brought it up, it's time for all of us, all of you guys, let's get excited. We're going to go through a big change. This is kind of first that we're getting details of it. It is time to get excited. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to what's happening. Get out there and start, I'm really happy that this group came. This is a small group. This isn't our whole church. So I'm going to get out there. I'm going to talk to people. Let's get excited. I'm excited. I'm positive. I mean, I made it through the last couple of years as the chairman of the board of elder, which is a very difficult kind of soul-wrenching position, but it also allows one to grow. And I've gotten to meet so many more people for it. I am so blessed. And I would never probably have imagined myself out here saying these type of things to a group as I was growing up in my own church, and my parents, were having to make me wake up during the sermon or whatever. This is a very long time ago, but this place has been wonderful to my family, wonderful to my daughter, and, I want to share it with as many people as possible. So yes, I'm committed. I know Dave is. We support each other, and we will. I just want to invite you all. Let's get excited. Let's get excited. We're going to have some changes. I think everything is going to be okay, as Pastor said, and we're going to do this together, and we're going to get new faces in even more. I've got the chance to meet a lot of the new members over the past couple of years, doing interviews, and then we do the thing called Hebrews every month with the guys, and so we've invited them to that, and I see them there, and so I'm actually seeing it. I'm seeing new members. I'm seeing people get involved, and it's exciting, but it's kind of growing like this. It's not like a big bang type excitement, but I think we can grow that, and I think we just keep letting it spread. But that's your pep talk from the elders. So
I'd love to just say two of our newest members just had to leave, and I won't say their names. I'll keep them anonymous. And they're 79 years old, and they came up to me and they said, "We joined this church because it's exciting," and we're excited to be here. So, yeah, Janine, I might be calling you to help with Start Here, and you'll see it. You'll see it.
Yeah, and if I could throw in that yesterday, our flag football program, I don't know, has anybody come to see a flag football game? We've got 6 teams of kids playing flag football on a Saturday morning. A number of them are not members here. A number of them have become school families because of our flag football program. So come on out Saturday morning between 8 and 11 o'clock, right out there. You'll see youth excited about just having fun.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing. I'm Brenda Connolly, and I've been a member here my entire life. And yes, years ago, I went to school here. My kids have gone to school. My mom even went to school in the other school. And there was an excitement. But I think we've heard Pastor talk about it. They were lining up at the door. We were just opening the doors, and everybody was coming in. It's different now. We have to create the excitement. We have to get out into the community and create that excitement to bring people in. We don't have a staff that can do, all these things. We need volunteers. We have got to build up our volunteer and our lay leadership ministries like we used to have. And then the more people you have involved, the more excitement there is, and the more contagious it becomes. But our church is outside these doors, and it's called outreach, and it's community.
I got a comment, and if you get Kurt a mic. Last comment is, and I learned this from Pastor Randy from his PLI training, and this is especially true of LCMS churches. The solutions of the past are the problem of today, and we're working through some of those right now. So what we do a lot as leaders is tedious and difficult to work through this stuff, but we're finally getting through some of these things. And at the same time, we have had these other great things happen. If you came to the Easter egg hunt, it was it was a little overwhelming. We're doing more and more of these things. We had the Bethlehem Inn because we didn't have enough time or people to do the Bethlehem walk. But these ideas that we're empowering our staff and our volunteers to do are coming together. And it's just starting to hit things that I think many of us see. So that's exciting for me. My son is, off in Lake Park now. Hi, Josh. And doing great things there and, being a great witness to his friends and learning how to be a leader. And that's everything I wanted for him. And my daughter's going through the same thing as she's still going to school here. So these are the things that I'm, as a parent, I'm excited about and try to foster as a leader, as one of your leaders here.
For us that are no longer 70s, we find excitement in looking through the church directory. But the church directory was last done in 2010. And there's a lot of new people we'd like to be able to greet and see their pictures and see their kids. And I think it's long overdue, even though it's an old-fashioned thing. It's a book. It doesn't have a screen. But we need to redo that directory for a lot of us people that are no longer in our 70s.
So I can organize some photographers. I think I just need someone to organize the putting of it together, and we'll make that happen. I think we said that like 2 years ago, and then I probably said I would do it, and I got distracted. And it'll all go into Realm. So, all right. So Carol tells us Realm will be our directory, but I think there will be a need to have a way for us to make sure that follow up and making sure that people get their pictures into there. Okay. Thank you.
I think when Pastor answered the question about the Imagine portion of the budget going for Carol and Randy's salaries and that running out in a year and a half or so, that people's positions that are going to be eliminated because of retirement and Pastor Mormon going part-time, aren't they going to replace Regine and Pastor part-time? Or?
Well, this is where it gets weird for us as leaders because we can't manage this the way we would manage a company. It's going to be the job of the next senior pastor to figure out how he wants to, what type of pastor he wants to be, what type of senior pastor he wants to be, and then what staff he wants to build up around him. So that's where it gets strange when we try to come in as church council and say, well, we think X, Y, and Z should be done. We think there should be a specific timeline for this, and we think we got to have target dates so that people can figure out what they're doing. And then we learned how it's actually done in ministry, and then we come together with a plan on how to do that. So, that's kind of our struggle, is we don't want to dictate what the next senior pastor is how he's gonna run this church when we don't know exactly, who or when it is. I personally hope it's Randy. If it's not, for whatever reason, I mean, he may choose not to do it or what have you. We don't want to set up a bunch of things that are going to dictate how that's going to work. What we do know when we put together the call committee is we realized that we wanted to have a different type of ministry than Pastor Mueller had. Because the style of his ministry worked really well in the 90s and the 2000s. And we're in a completely different world now. Then we got completely different style and needs, and that's what we were hoping for. So we're trying to take the right incremental steps, and that's why we want to do this next youth leader. We know whatever we're going to do, we're going to invest in that. We need to reach out to families who aren't coming here already and who aren't going to our school, and have more programs like the Easter egg hunt and the Bethlehem Inn and the Bethlehem Walk, and do more than just Sunday school to find people and meet their needs. So that's what we're trying to piece together as we're in the waiting period. So I'll just share, for us as leaders, having an indeterminate timeline for the transition was really problematic because we couldn't figure out where to focus anything. So that's why we worked with Pastor and set some guidelines, and now we can actually focus. I hope that helps.
I'd like to share just one exciting thing I see in the schools. As many of you know, I'm a substitute teacher, so I've been in many, many rooms here over the 20 years. And you would be very proud of our kids if you see how things go during the day. Lots of classrooms have devotions at the beginning, and nobody says, I have to read devotions. There are volunteers to read devotions. They help in the worship services. We have kindergartners who can stand up in front of a group and say their one line about Jesus, or there's a community thing coming up this night. The education that they are giving and the confidence they have in themselves, both in standing up in front of people and talking about their faith, are absolutely amazing. And I see it because I'm in many, many rooms, not just one. And it's a real gift to watch that happening in our school.
All right, do we have any other questions? Oh, okay, I've got a move and a second to adjourn. That feels pretty certain here. All right, I'm just gonna end us in prayer, if that's okay. All right. Father God, we thank you for this time together. I am so appreciative of this church, of Pastor Mueller, Pastor Warman, Deaconess Regine, our school, the people that have become the best friends of mine in the world. For me and my children, I've met here while learning to become a disciple of Christ. I pray that what I've personally experienced, others have experienced and will experience because of us, and that you send us your Holy Spirit to empower us to do this here in Roselle. Give us the tools, the resources to be what you want us to be. And it's in your Son's name whom we pray. Amen.